Yeah, I'm actually sort of shaking. It's such an assault.
You know, it's a very strange film for me because I made this film, I made the script, the film, before anything happened, you know. But now, it's almost getting to be like my own idea, not idea, my life.
Yeah, I just want to read what your instruction for this film was, because I have it. And the instruction reads, a cameraman will chase a girl on a street with a camera persistently until he corners her in an alley, and if possible, until she is in a falling position.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, I think what the first film, which we'll return to, Bottoms, is, as you've said, as you wrote at the time, a petition for peace. If you don't have violence, you don't have a petition for peace. And then 3 years later, you're in London making this film, which has, it looks peaceful.
Well, it's what women's going through, mostly men go through, but it's just the idea that so just to end like that. And that's how it is.
And when you say it's sort of reflecting your own life or your own trajectory, or that's not how you feel, is it? You're free. You're freer than anyone I know.
I went through it and I came out from the tunnel, maybe. But it's a very strange situation that the other day, Ringo was saying something. When he goes on a concert, and when they go to a town, and most musicians will just go out and have fun. And Ringo was always staying in a hotel. So the musician said, well, why don't you come with us? And he said, well, I can't. And one day, he said, oh, well, I'll go with them. The minute that he went out of the hotel, there was like many people who trying to get his motorcycle, that he couldn't really move. So he went back to his room. But there are many situations like that we create without knowing what the end is going to be.
So this was made in 1969. How much of it reflects your life at that time under the global gaze of needledom, I guess?
I wasn't comparing that still. So I thought, well, that was just a film of Yoko, a very different person from that film. And that's how I thought about it. But it was getting more and more not similar, but there's something in that film that is giving me a message.
I mean, it's so psychological. I mean, it's rape, but in fact, there's never any. Okay.
Oh,
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Christophe. I mean, it's titled rape, as you say. It's rape in quotations, but there's never any touch. I mean, in fact, the assaulters never touch their object of assault. So it's a psychological assault, which of course is, again, much more violent and much more unsettling. I also thought this time the scene in the cemetery was so extraordinary, because that too feels like an assault. That too feels like she and you and the camera and us are assaulting the privacy of the dead, which had looked pretty unkempt in that particular London cemetery. So what was that all about? Why were you drawn to this particular kind of narrative of violence at that time, and yet it's so resonant for us today?
I was always interested in the kind of almost conceptual kind of violence or peace or anything that's conceptual. And so that in this case, I just wanted to show that even conceptual violence is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. And you've known violence.
Yes. Well, I mean, my life had a few violence that is coming to me rather than me doing something about it. So I was always like, well, I wouldn't say that I was a victim. I mean, that sounds like, well, maybe I was drawing something like that to me. But there was so much violence in my life.
You were a witness.
Huh?
You were a witness.
Yeah, well, you know.
I mean, from the time of Japan, when
Yeah,
Japan was at
yeah.
war, born and raised during a time of tremendous war, and the devastation that you saw and lived through, the betrayal, the psychological betrayal of the changeover of those governments and the fall of one belief system and the rise of another that soon became empty too, the American promises of.
And it was like observing it and being hopeless about it. There was nothing I can do about it. And that is typical in this film. I think that she was really finally realizing that she couldn't fight them.
Yeah, yeah. How much of this was directed? I mean, how did you find the girl? I read there was some complicity with the sister who let you in the house. And did it go over a couple of days? Yes, yeah, sisters. How much of it was shot over several days, or was it all in one horrible?
No, not one day.
Assault?
Several days.
Several days.
And the director came back with a kind of situation that she wanted to show me, but she did, which is like he was first going out to I think maybe elementary school girls, and there was upon this and she just ran away, and it didn't work. With her, I think that she had a very strange feeling about it. In other words, like it wasn't like, okay, go. Yeah, but there's something about it that she wasn't sure, and that feeling was always until the end, I think.
I think that's very interesting. It's an ambiguity. And at first she is sort of curious and she's almost flirtatious, and then she sort of gives up, and then she sort of hopes that it'll go away until it drives her completely mad. I think that tension is partly what gives it so much interest, is because it's not simply one reaction. It's not simply run away. It's not simply come on. It's this progression. But it's not only in her reaction, it is so filmic. So much of the emotion and the psychology, so much of the rape is actually camera work. And I think what's interesting to compare this to Bottoms is the abstraction that comes
the
through.
Bottoms is another story, but both of them were sort of trying to show that there could be some almost like a petition of peace.
Yeah.
And the Bottoms film, I said this was a petition of peace, But with this too, I'm just saying there's so much ugliness and violence, and a situation that is so mean that you feel like you're going to be killed. That kind of situation is always in the world, and we're not fighting it really because it's done in a very conceptual way. So there's no way to fight to do something.
Let's talk a little bit about Bottoms, because I'm not sure how many people know the history of it. And what we saw tonight is actually Yoko's third film, made in the sort of Fluxus period, at sort of the inspiration of Machunas, if that's fair, in 1966. And it's a 5.5-minute film with the characters you saw, including John's brother, Jeffrey, and your daughter, Kyoko. And then you go to London. And the longer film, which is 80 minutes, and we like to say has 365 bottoms, one, of course, for every day of the year.
Well, that number is also conceptual.
And it's also conceptual, note. And it also has a soundtrack. And that comes out of your film script that says string bottoms together in place of signatures for petition for peace.
Yeah.
So tell us about what's the difference between the two? How did one lead to the other? And then there's a lot of stories about what happened in London when this hit.
Well, so this was the film that you saw now, the Fluxus one, was almost like the roots of what I was thinking, what to do with it. And so in London, I was able to do it in a way that I wanted to. In New York, well, of course, it was a matter of all sorts of things. And financially, I couldn't do it, etc. In London, also, I was not financially available to do the whole thing myself, but many people sort of helped me. And but then it's a very interesting thing that that the TV people were very together with me, and they even put some of the bottom film, I mean, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes of it, on the actual TV news, and which is something that I never thought that they would do. And I don't think they did in any other country, really.
And I think that's all the more remarkable when you realize that the British Board of Film Censors had censored the film.
Yeah, the censorship came first.
Yes.
And that's why the TV really went like rebellious about it.
And following your demonstration with 1,000 daffodils. With 1,000 daffodils.
I know. See, what I did was, and this might be some kind of thing that you can pick up on. They censored it, and Sir Trevelyan, he was a John Trevelyan, and he was the director of the censorship. And so I wanted to go and ask him, would you please not censor it? And so to do that, I took a lot of daffodils, and I just went to the building where the censorship is, and I thought, I want to give these flowers to John Trevelyan. And so they all took the flowers inside, and then they came out and said, well, you're allowed, you can come in to the censor bureau. So I went down, I went to the second floor, and all the rooms and around there were just full of daffodils, my daffodils. So already the daffodils spoke to him, I suppose. And he said, well, okay. And
they lifted the ban and they reduced it to an X rating.
So I think there was, the reason I want to tell you this is because that when you want to oppose something and you want to stand up for it, there are many ways of doing it. And, the simple way is to sort of, all of us standing up and sort of say, stop it, or something like that. But that you have to think about the psychology of the people who are against you. They're usually very powerful people. So, just sort of raising hand is not going to do. And I had to do it single-handedly. So I thought, well, what about flowers?
I think it's really what about Yoko? It's really what about Yoko? We've never doubted your powers of persuasion, but it is sort of amazing to imagine a 27-year-old Japanese woman, as all the press likes to point out, your age, your nationality, and she got so much press. And this was pre-John. This was pre the whole celebrity notion. This is an avant-garde artist wandering the streets of London, taking on the entire British film establishment with a film that was stringing bottoms together for a petition of peace. I mean, it's the imagination, the ambition, the audacity, the hilarity of it, and then the impact of it.
Well, that was the only weapon I had, so that's what I used.
And I think what's also interesting is what struck me again tonight, seeing them back to back like this, is the abstract. Is again what I was talking about a moment ago. How the film work serves to completely abstract the parts of the body that you're focused on. So the bottom becomes breasts, it becomes a landscape, it becomes, you don't know what age, you don't know what sex you're looking at. And then with her, you rarely see her whole figure. It's like it gets focused on her hair, the texture of her hair, the light, and the whole sort of subject matter starts to fall apart, and it becomes, kind of meditative. It becomes truly an abstract film. And again, if we look back and think of the years when this was done, this was so radically in advance, showing us the material of film, the click of the board, whatever that is. You're exposing the properties of film itself, which was so much a part of experimental filmmaking at that time. And you just sort of walked into it and absorbed it and took it to a new level.
Well, the thing about rape is that I was having a miscarriage or something, and so Joan and I were in the hospital, and we were in bed. And so I said, well, we have to make the film rape. And he said, well, how are you going to do this? So I said, well, let's get the director, I'll tell him exactly what to do. And that's how we did it. He would come back with the shots, and say, how about this one? I said, no, you have to get somebody else. And then, he kept getting somebody, I think not too many people, just maybe 3 or 4 people before this woman.
And what happened to this woman eventually?
Well,
did we follow her?
Well, I don't know what happened to her in that sense, but she went back to Hungary. She was Hungarian, I think. She went back to Hungary, and she was creating an institute where they help animals and bring animals that are hurt, whatever. And so she was really a very interesting woman, in that sense.
Did she ever see the film? Did she end up?
I
don't understand I think she's Viennese. I don't understand the German, but I did get the Italian. It's like, whose film is this? Did she ever find out the answer?
Not really, I don't think. But she went through the experience.
Yeah.
And of course, she signed off. She said, this is fine. But from then on, she had to go through a lot of things that was almost like what it was in the film. Many people were curious about her, and so it was almost difficult for her to get a job in that sense.
I think what also links the two films obviously is feminism in very different ways, and of course so much of your work in film and performance, your instructions, who you are as a person, your music, your marriage, your life, your art that you live so brilliantly for all of us to admire and learn from. Feminism is a word that came later. It came after your work. You didn't even know what you were doing. You were just screaming against the sky. But it very much links these two in different ways. And I think Crissie is the one who wrote that one of the many remarkable constructions behind bottoms is that the distinction between the male bottom and the female bottom is zero. And that is in itself very radical, because we had hundreds of years of isolating the female body as the object of artistic gaze, as the object of control, as the object of surveillance. And the naked male body, of course, was never in sight. And it was never, even if it were, it was not equated in the same way. It wasn't literally, as you say, woven in. It wasn't stripped in. So the fact that you're kind of breaking down the barriers between the sexes in this film in such a, as you say, kind of covertly peaceful
that
way.
Was very important, because for me it was very important, because otherwise it would just go back to seeing women's butts, as an interesting object. And I didn't want to go into that and go that way.
And of course the rape with the title, which is also, I think, a subtitle for it is Chase. Obviously what we've already talked about is also has a highly feminist critique it at the heart of it. No.
Mm. Well, number 4, you see, that too just came to me, and I think there are many elements in my work that I just get inspired and do it without knowing what that inspiration was really about.
And that subject, if we just keeping with feminism, we can call it many other things, but that compassion for that which is surveilled, that which is controlled, that which has no control. In this case, women, the plight of women, that has remained a subject of your art, a subject of your life, of your call to peace, to the world. Where is feminism today? Who are the women who are?
Well, we're all feminists, I think, but in many different ways. And for a reason that I don't know about, that finally we came to a point where we know exactly what women are going through in terms of, being object of rape. Rape is not, in terms of just a physical rape, how they're raped. And so that is a statement that we are all making. We're raping. We're raped, But then we have to really understand that the world is created between men and women. And there are many, many different things that are happening in the male species that we don't know about. We don't really particularly care about. And we just keep saying, we women need to be not raped, But when I see this film, especially now when I saw it, I realized that it's a very more complex situation.
Yeah.
Being by us being raped, because there's certain points where you just want, hey, what is this?
Yeah.
It's like you're almost wanting, and then gradually you feel, well, this is something I don't want, but by then it's too late in a way.
No, I think you're right. I think it's been, the film has been traditionally read in terms of this sort of feminist rape. But you're right. I think seeing it tonight, it's so much, the themes are so much bigger than that. It's sort of the dehumanization. It's the objectification and dehumanization of anybody, of anything, of any people. I think it goes, the woman stands in for that, but it's actually much more universal and resonates so much more universally, I feel, for us today.
Yeah, so I'm starting to think that we have to reach our hands to male species as well. At least let them know that we understand them. We understand their plight as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, whenever I say this, and these days I say it in many places actually, the fact that we have to reach our hands to each other really. But then it just, it's not a very successful speech then. They're also, what is she saying, But it's a complex situation that we have to understand, I think.
Yoko, tell us what you're working on now. You've always really at the heart of everything. It's about changing the world. One of our favorite sayings of yours is, the dream we dream alone is just a dream, but the dream we dream together is a reality. And the whole notion of your art, that an encounter with an idea that we complete, that the viewer completes, that's the other kind of link between these two films, that encounter can change me, and then I in turn can touch another person, and then society as a whole, as an uneven whole, can evolve.
Well, I think
what are you touching now? What's your next touch?
I still think that we are changing the world, even when we don't want to. The world is changing, but the world is changing only because we will it. And we will it in a way that we don't even know that we're willing. You see, the thing is, we're not just our consciousness, it's the subconscious. And all of the things that our brain is thinking, we don't even know. But that brain is really working. And I think that all our brains are at this point really working to make a big, different world. We're jumping now. And we're going to be successful, I think, in that sense.
What's the measure of success?
Pardon?
What's the measure of success?
Measure of success, it is so incredible that it's very difficult to explain at all. But one, we will have a very peaceful, I'm going to use the word peaceful world where we can really have a certain kind of freedom without having fear of it. And as long as we don't have the fear of it anymore, we're going to start thinking about all sorts of things. We're going to have a beautiful world that we never had before, because now the fear is stopping us.
So interesting, you remind us of the fear of freedom. We were watching, actually sort of in preparation for tonight, I somehow had the inspiration of watching Easy Rider last weekend.
Oh, yeah.
69, also a film from 69, which is amazing. And of course the great line there that Jack Nicholson says is, you know, they're afraid of your freedom, he says to the motorcycle riders. And of course that's the night that he gets killed. And by those who fear the freedom that these guys are representing, they all get killed.
And we are totally fearing fear. And the reason is because freedom almost suggests to some people that they can even kill people or do any harm to people. You know, that's freedom to some people. You know, in their mind, not so much what they do, but in their mind, they think, oh, that means that I can do this, something terrible, and it doesn't matter. But it's not like that.